Today's panel is titled Rituals and Traditions. I should say I'm Christopher Merrill, Director of the International Writing Program, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this panel, Rituals and Traditions 2.0, and that's with a question mark. Fall is the season of many near-folk rituals in the United States, Halloween, Thanksgiving, etc., and we have invited the writers to tell us about a traditional tale, event, character, figure in their world, whether continuously popular or perhaps also challenged and thus updated for more current tastes or values. This is especially important in this time of COVID when everything seems to be under review, including rituals and traditions. As always, we have a distinguished group of panelists, and we will begin right here to my left with Sarah Blau, who is an Israeli playwright and fiction writer. She's had her short stories. She's now off to coughing land. I knew as soon as I gave her name that things would start to fall apart here. Well, while she's getting some water, I'll just tell you that Sarah is the author of the novels The Book of Creation, Those Well-Raised Girls, Steak, and The Others, a portion of which we heard last night in a dazzling staged reading and Theater B as part of our Global Express. Her books have been translated into English, Chinese, Lithuanian, German, French, and Dutch. Among her plays, the last one, the one-woman show, Thy Shall Write, and Rhinoplasty. She's the recipient of the 2015 Prime Minister's Prize for Hebrew Literature, and she participates in the fall residency courtesy of the Fulbright Association in Israel. Next in our lineup will be Diana del Angel, a poet, fiction writer, journalist, scholar, and activist from Mexico. She's the author of Vessel, Processes of the Night, and Ravine, as well as critical writings in print and digital media and translations of poetry from the Nahuatl. A regular participant in contemporary poetry workshops in Mexico, she has been the recipient of fellowships and residencies in Mexico, the U.S., and Canada. Her poems last night were performed again in Global Express, and this morning she did double duty, speaking as part of our Summer Institute panel about writing and social justice. She takes part in the fall residency courtesy of the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. Following her will be Mei Yue from Myanmar, a poet, screenwriter, and publisher. Her work began appearing in periodicals and collections in 2010. The first volume of her poetry, Courier, appeared in 2013, and a second, You and I, appeared in 2016. In 2017, while she was also working as a digital content strategist and TV writer, she founded the poetry publishing house 90/91, and she also was a part of Global Express last night. Her participation has been made possible in the fall residency by the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. And batting cleanup today will be Alexandria K from Greece. She's a fiction writer, screenwriter, dramatist, and journalist who is a regular contributor to Greek magazines and newspapers. And she's collaborated with the National Theatre of Greece, the Greek National Opera, and other major cultural institutions. Her 2018 play, Revolutionary Ways to Clean Your Swimming Pool, has been translated widely and received a Eurodram 2019 prize. Her most recent play, Milk Blood, which retells the story of Medea, premiered at the Ancient Theatre of Epidaurus. She, too, was a part of Global Express last night, and her participation in this fall residency is made possible by the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. As always, if you want more information about the writers, biographical or otherwise, as well as to look at samples of their work, please visit iwp.uiowa.edu. And with that, I will turn it over to Sarah. Oh, well, welcome.
Thank you. I think it's a psychosomatic, really. Suddenly I don't see well. I'm really excited. I'm going to talk about a figure that means a lot to me. And I think it's really my body reacts. Sarah the matriarch. Historical, mythological, and religious figure can often be highly influential in our lives as a role model or part of a cultural, spiritual, or mental DNA. I am a religious, modern Orthodox Jew. The Bible has always been present in my life. Biblical characters accompanied me from childhood until today. I was always interested in 4 biblical matriarchs: Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. They were married to the 3 biblical fathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Yaakov had 2 wives, which at the time must have made the life of men easier, but I'm not sure it was the same for the women. The last comment is related to a feminist reading of the Bible, which has been developing in the past few years, both in religious and secular world, in Israel and elsewhere. But the character who had influenced me most is Sarah, the first Hebrew matriarch. In the Jewish tradition, she is seen as strong and iron-fisted, but also considered as a difficult person. I feel she was misunderstood, and I'd like to correct this injustice here in front of you by offering a new perspective of her character. A personal note before we dive in: my name is Sarah. I named after my grandfather's mother, who died at a lung infection at 27, and also after his daughter, Sarah, who was murdered in Auschwitz when she was 5. It was not easy growing up in the shadow of those 2 family members, but I actually find the darkest shadow to be that of biblical Sarai. She was called at the beginning Sarai, but God changed her name. We'll get to it. Sarai was Abraham's niece. She married him at a young age, some say 12, and they set off for a long journey to the desert. Her barrenness is what defined her status for many years. During the biblical period, barren women was considered to have the lowest social status. If a woman hadn't given birth to at least 1 child, she hadn't earned her bread. She was a burden. As a barren woman, Sarai's life was tough, but she deeply desired to have a child, so she devised a plan that was reasonable in that time. Sarah planned for Abraham and their servant Hagar to have a child together and for her to be his mother. It was a good plan, but it did not succeed. First of all, from the moment Hagar became pregnant, she began teasing Sarai. There was plenty of Talmudic stories showing that Hagar spoke ill of Sarai, but Sarai did not remain in debt. She fought back until Hagar was forced to flee to the desert. That is where the perception of Sarai as a tough, ruthless figure crystallized. Unfortunately, I cannot do much to defend her here, but eventually Hagar returns home to Abraham and to Sarai. When Ishmael, Abraham and Hagar's son, is born, in front of Sarai's hungry eyes, a new family unit comes into existence, that of Abraham, Ishmael, and Hagar. Sarai is left out. What choice does she have besides praying to God? God hears her praise, and in a special ceremony, he changed her name, adding the letter H. On a personal level, 20 years ago, I changed the spelling of my name, just like Sarah. I added an extra H to my name. In Hebrew, we spell Sarah usually S-R-H, and I spell it like S-H-R-A. It's very, very rare. I was then in a depression 20 years ago, depression period, and needed a change. In the Bible, Sarah gets pregnant shortly after her name change. In my case, the change I was searching was not pregnancy, but after I added the extra age, I felt something shifted inside me. I don't know if it was it was a miracle or some kind of psychological awakening, but whatever it was, it worked. In the Bible, when God tells Sarah that she will have a child via 3 angels who stop by for a visit, she is in such state of disbelief that she bursts out laughing. In the Jewish tradition, this laughter is considered an expression of disbelief. But I believe Sarah. I believe that she laughed out of surprise, pure joy and belief. Even today, the Jewish tradition continued to view this laugh as a negative light, as part of the ambivalence associated with Sarah's character. But I see it differently. I support Sarah. Today, men are not the only ones who get to interpret the Bible. Women can do so as well. Women tell the story through feminist lens. The story, Life of Sarah, was the weekly Torah portion, read exactly 1 week ago in synagogues. Ironically, the portion began with Sarah's death. The portion described how Abraham came to her house for a visit, which suggests they were no longer live together. Sarah may have died alone, but I still hear her laughing, ringing in my bells, vibrating through time, the millennia, and countless generations. I wish that ancient history had written about happy, laughing, cheering women. New feminist readers of the canonical text, like the New Testament, Quran, and ancient Asian texts, allow us to reimagine the women of those time periods and interpret their story in new ways. I'd like to say thank you to our matriarch Sarah Laughter and to her, she who overcame so many challenges, whose figure survived through the rise and fall of civilization until today. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you.
Well, I want to say thank you, all of you, for coming in spite of the weather. So I'm going to read. My ofrenda. When my grandmother died, I was 9 years old. I remember my strangeness because my aunt's house looked like a preparation for a party. Women were cooking mole and tamales, and there was huapango, traditional music of La Huasteca, which is the region my family comes from. I asked my mother, "Why does this look like a party?" And she answered, "Because this is the last party that woman invites you to." That was my first encounter with the idea of that. My mother also gave me some piece of advice concerning my death. One piece of advice has to do with dogs. Take care of your dog because you will need her help to cross the river in Mictlán. In the Nahua worldview, Mictlán is the land of the dead. When you die, you go there to exist in another way. The other advice was also related to animals. Take care of your cat, because if you treat your cat badly, when you go to Mictlán, the Mictlán lords will punish you and they will ask you to count the hair of a cat. The third one is my favorite because more than advice, it's a story. My mother told me that her grandmother had a box in which she put her teeth and the strands of hair that fell out. When my mother asked why, my great-grandmother answered, "Because when you die, you have to carry your own body with you. Otherwise, the Mictlán lords will make you look for the pieces of your body, and you will not rest in peace." My mother says, when my great-grandmother died, they put this box in her coffin. When she told me this story, I thought it was a wonderful because in my mind as a child, I thought it was a great opportunity for traveling again and again and in some way staying alive. In my mind, it doesn't matter that I have never traveled in real life because then my hair could be everywhere and I have heard that all the trash is dumped in the oceans. Rather, I trust that I will travel in the future. And to reinforce this destiny, I have also decided to leave strands of hair in all the places I would like to come back. Tradición comes from tradere, a Latin verb that means to carry. So traditions are the things we take with us wherever we go. In my family, it's very important to celebrate Dia de Muertos. Sometimes we may not celebrate Christmas, but we always make the offering for our ancestors. Dia de Muertos is the most significant celebration in my family. We also call it Chantolo, which is its name in Nahuatl. Since I live alone, my ofrenda is to my grandmother Guadalupe, my great-grandmother Mariquita, my two grandfathers Vicente and Miguel, my two uncles, Fermin and Eloy, who died by COVID-19, to Julio and my friend Toño. November 2021 is the first time I'm not in Mexico, so it was complicated to make pan de muertos, tamales, like a candle or burnt copal, so I decided to make my ofrenda of words. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Yue from Burma. Throughout the 12 months of a year in Burma, each month has its own festival. But not all festivals are celebrated these days. Some popular festivals that we continue to celebrate yearly include the Water Festival, Dingjian in April, the Lighting Festival, the Dingzhou in October, and another lighting festival, the Zaodang, in November. Today, I'm going to tell you about a festival that is not included in the Burma calendar as a special festival, but it is very popular throughout the country, the Dangbyeong Festival. Dangbyeong is the name of a small village located in the middle part of Burma. Long, long ago in the 11th century, during the era of Bagan, King Anorata built a pagoda at the Dangbyeong village. By his order, all members of his court nobles had to bring one brick each to help construct this wish-fulfilling pagoda. When the appointed day came, the two brothers failed to contribute their share. The two rowdy womanizers got executed on charges of disobedience and negligence of duty. Then one day, as the king was about to depart from the place, the spirits of the two brothers appeared before the king to ask for rewards for the services they had rendered him. So the king built a big shrine near his pagoda to honor the two brothers. The Dangbyeong festival honors them by celebrating and worshiping the spirits of the two brothers. We call them Nat. Nats are spirits that can help with finances, love, etc., and 80% of the population believe in them. Most Nats, as the tradition goes, met a violent death. So when they revisit the earth, they must be kept happy. And apparently, what keeps the two brothers happy is smoking, dancing, and drinking their favorite tipple. Nagadol, or the wives of the spirit, work as professional ritualists, shamans, and entertainers, translating the realms of the supernatural and human, usually for a fee. Most Nagadols are transgender gay men. Earlier, it used to be women who work as Nagadols, but these days the number of Nagadols in the transgender community is increasing. You can call them drag queens as they are with a pretty full makeup face, amazing color pattern dress, and they also have names suspiciously similar to the drag queens. During the festival, they each set up a shrine and worship and work as a shaman. Now, I want to talk about the relationship between this spirit festival Dambyo and gays. Why do gay people love this festival and label it as a gay pride? Because it is a chance to meet gays from all across the country, and also a chance to wear whatever you want. You don't have to pretend to be a masculine strongman as you usually behave in your family and society. You can be yourself in Dambyo. This is the getaway from life once a year. Dambyo is heaven for transgender people, but not for the younger generation, especially from urban areas who do not believe in spiritual things. So, how do they celebrate their pride? Since 2014, a new tradition has begun in Yangon, the former capital of Burma. There was an art and a cultural event called And Proud, held yearly in Yangon. And Proud takes place over 2 weekends at the end of January. The festival includes queer film festivals along with film workshops, panel discussions, film competitions, and film screenings with debates. Other events include photo exhibitions in a competition, drag queen shows and performances, and the recently added River Pride Boat Parade in 2019. Starting from 2018, they got permission from the government to celebrate the festival at the public park downtown in Yangon. And in the following year, in 2019, they changed their name to become Yangon Pride. As the events have started taking place in the public spaces, all the people, queer or straight, young or old, now join the festival together. Everyone loves to celebrate it even if they don't understand what we are celebrating. I once heard that when the drag show had started in the park, everyone was amazed by the performances of the participants and were cheering them up. At that time, a man and a child were standing behind me, and what the father told the child was, "Son, look at that child. He is so fabulous, isn't he?" So footnote, a child is a slang word used to address a transgender or gay man in a discriminatory way. In Burmese, a child means something that is dry and not wet, that is something against the norm. It also means sissy or fag or fairy in English slang. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for coming. I'm Alexandria K from Greece, and I'm gonna talk to you about the traditional tale of Madeira. Messing with the Gods, or How I Revisited Madeira. In Greece, we have a long-held tradition called Don't Mess with Tradition, an idea that applies especially to our history and our cultural heritage, and in essence means do not change the narrative that's been agreed on by some brilliant minds some centuries ago, even if it makes no sense. The Greek Revolution, the Greek Civil War, the extinction of the Jewish communities during World War II, the Greek junta are topics that still hurt and thus should not be explored in depth, neither by historians nor artists. Not yet. Another thing we as Greeks are too respectful with is our ancient Greek masters. The words are like the Holy Bible to us, words you are not allowed to doubt publicly, let alone initiate a conversation with or offer another perspective. Playwrights around the world have written in numerous new versions of Medeiros, Oedipuses, Electras, but we, as Greeks, obey religiously to the aforementioned rule. Last year, I was commissioned to do the exact opposite, revisit the old myth of Madeira and have it staged in the same place where Euripides' Medea first premiered. Having studied Medea for years, I never found a sufficient explanation for this heroine's actions. The narrative around Medea goes like this. She's madly in love, she's jealous, she's barbarian. So she kills her 2 children, her husband's wife, and the wife's father. Who hasn't? Even though I know motherhood, marriage, and betrayal myself, I could never, as a woman, relate to these actions. At school, they teach us not to take these characters literally, as they're not human. They are either gods or of God's descendants. Since nowadays gods have died, in my version, I had no option but to treat this heroine as just a woman. I did not intend by any means to be disrespectful to Euripides, not even for the fun of it. What felt more urgent was to pay tribute to a woman who was irreparably hurt, in the same way many women around me, before me, in my community, my small village, have been. To explore this, I started with the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear the word woman. It is a simple phrase. I rue the day that you two were born as women. It was something my mother often said to me and my sister, always in a voice thick with rage, never with any explanation. I didn't understand. I was incredibly proud that we'd been born women. We were capable of so many things that men weren't, and I had living examples. I was growing up surrounded by them. As a woman, you were capable of the miracles of a holy martyr. You could tamp down your egotism, love more than you were loved, endure betrayal with resignation, stand the pains of childbirth, of daily care for others, of being abandoned. I was being raised by women who had themselves been raised with lives of saints and whole villages of eyes around them, watching their every move, eager for them to take a wrong step or stumble. From the first time I ever read Medea, I imagined a village of eyes like that around her. Between the lines, I could feel that eye lurking, the eye that tells a woman how to carry her body and emotions, how to mutilate them on the altar of social cohesion. An eye whose functioning the heroine herself had accepted years ago, had internalized, had learned to see through. In Madeira, I see a woman with a grievance, not a woman in love. And that grievance arises because the eye inside her has just closed. After she is betrayed and told to leave, she no longer has a role to play. She's been sacrificing herself for so many years in order to belong, but those sacrifices earned her none of the things that belonging brings. Now, all that's left of her is a woman, plain and simple, at a time when female identity is always defined in connection with someone else. Daughter, wife, mother. And she's now coming to realize what that sacrifice meant. Its cost of sweat and blood, its futility. The eye is closed, and Medea is seeing it from the outside with her own eyes for the first time. We too have begun to see it over these past few years as women acquire the voice and courage to unveil injustice. Society's lining is coming undone, and the underlying structure is being revealed, built by men, but oppressive towards both sexes. What wasn't possible for us to say or even see was that the backbone of society was exclusively female, built of silence, endurance, and loads of guilt. To my mind, from scene to scene, my heroine is experiencing the same revelation we're all now living through the things we thought it was we're living. Excuse me, there must be some mistake here. The things we thought it was our obligation, even our pride, to endure was from the start oppressive, painful, and irrational. Because our experience as women was written and dictated by male eyes, minds, and hands. However, the male hand of Euripides in 431 BCE writes in the first Stasimon of his Medea how the Muses, or according to other translators, the songs of the old poets will die. Female characters will no longer be maligned, but will instead be honored by the writer-creators. Other phrases from this testament. But my life, my woman's life, will sound loud and change people's minds. And also, Phoebus Apollo baptizes the first female poet. Is Euripides saying that women are now taking over the narration of their experience? The answer depends on the translation. But this is precisely how I interpret the social unrest today, as a changing of the guard regarding who will narrate human events from now on. If everything has already been said, it can still be said all over again from another point of view, the female. And if some people are afraid that if the narrator changes, the story will too, well, the right to be afraid. But this is the only way to achieve a complete, thus useful account of the human condition. Thank you.
Thank you all. Before I open the floor up to questions, I just want to say that, especially for those at home, if you want to read these panel presentations or presentations from any of the previous panels, please go to our website, iwp.uiowa.edu. And then I'm going to mention just a couple of upcoming events so that you're clear about what else remains in the rapid end of our fall residency. This afternoon, we'll have our final Shamba House reading. It will be live on Zoom, and it will feature Sanam Maher from Pakistan, Salwa Obaid from the UAE, and Fahri Oz from Turkey. On Sunday, Cinematheque at 6 o'clock in the Adler Journalism Building, room 105. Sanam will host a screening of Zoya Akhtar's Gully Boy. On Tuesday, November 16th, we will again be live on Zoom with an alum of the IWP, the Burmese writer Mathida. And next Friday, as I mentioned before, at noon, will be our traditional closing panel of the fall residency, Images of America. John V's got a microphone for anybody who has a question in the back. And while we're waiting for you to do that, I think I'm going to start by asking Alexandra, so what was the reaction in Greece to your retelling of Medea?
The women came out of the theater crying. Mm-hmm. The men attacked me. Yeah.
In print, I'm guessing? Or?
In print as well, yeah. And there was a huge fight, actually, after the premiere outside of the theater between the male critics and the female critics.
Really?
Yeah.
And does the argument continue, or have you noticed that it has done what you suggest in the end will be a new way of accounting for the human condition? Did you see any perceptible changes in how the... Not yet?
No, not yet, but no.
Right. That argues for more stagings of the Medea.
Yeah, there will be. So, but I don't know. This staging was exactly what I wanted to say. It was very loyal to my my interpretation of Madeira. So I think if they didn't get it this time, they won't get it in the future.
Touche. Okay, questions here?
Hi, it's Hannah. And I was wondering that about U.S. presentations because in South Korea, I'm coming from South Korea, and in South Korea there is a LGBT parade too, but once a year they do it, and every time when they are doing a queer parade, the many Christians and old people made a protest against the gay parade. So I was wondering, in Yangon, there is this kind of protest against the gay parade.
Thank you for asking. But in Yangon, there is no protest because, they are doing this as I said it in the article, they are doing this in the downtown, in a public area, in the park. So there is so many events, and so, you can watch movies and films, and you can also watch the performance. So they love to enjoying the celebration, but they don't know what we are celebrating for. So there's no argument about this. They just love to come and join the festival together. Yeah.
And has that continued even during the current political conflict? Is the festival still?
Yeah, ongoing? No. We last year, 2020, we canceled the festival because of the COVID, and now it's also because of the political situation there. We also canceled the events. Yeah.
So now COVID continues, but in the current political climate, there might be more trouble. If you were,
yeah. So we cancel every festival for the whole year. We're not celebrating any festival anymore.
Any festivals?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentations. My question is to Alexandra. I was actually very interested in the reaction that people had to Madeira, your interpretation of Madeira. I wanted to just find out if you at all had any kind of pushback from women who wanted to uphold the traditions. Because very often, if you look at, maybe let's take the idea of patriarchy. Normally, the assumption is always that men are the ones who uphold it, but usually, and especially from the context that I'm from, it's women who uphold it. And one thing about your piece that really struck me is how you said it is women that uphold society, but in silence, right? And that's something that really resonated with me, because even in where I'm from, it's the women who uphold everything. The men really don't do much. It's the women that drive everything quietly and in silence. So, and that struck me as you were reading. So I just wanted to understand if you had any kind of pushback from women who wanted to uphold the traditions that you are trying to dismantle.
No. The answer is no. They were just crying.
It is for Sarah. My question is, how do you interpret, or what do you think about the jealousy of Sarah ordering to her husband Abraham to expel Hagar and his son?
I thought a lot about it. As much as I want to defend Sarah, and I see her in a very positive eyes, there's a lot of Talmudic stories about her. First, I think it's a very, very difficult. You are barren, and then you take your servant, your personal servant. By the way, it was very important that Hagar was Sarah's servant, not Abraham's servant, and not something together. So she was her Sarah's servant. And, it's very difficult to me to talk about it. Today we see it very different, in very different eyes. And she thought, Sarah has, for her point of view, it was a good plan that Hagar will have the boy, and Sarah will take her to herself. But there are some Talmudic stories that say that Sarah didn't thought it. She looked at Hagar like, sorry to say it, like a property. She didn't thought about Hagar. And the moment Hagar became pregnant, think about it like young, fruitful, beautiful Hagar, and Sarah in the stories she's supposed to be like over 90. I don't know, they count it, I think, differently. And then they said, like Hagar told to Sarah, was walking like, like with her belly growing more and more. And the story said that she said to Sarah in front of her, look at you, what do you think? I am the fruitful and you're not, you're old. And she was very cocky. And I think Sarah could not bear it. So again, I cannot protect her in this way. They said she tortured her, not physically, because of course she was pregnant. But I think Sarah was she was not an easy woman. So she tortured her, probably, I don't know, mentally, or I don't even want to think about it. So Hagar ran to the desert. Now, it's very interesting what happened there. And like the Bible and the Quran, like it's the same story, but everyone tell it differently. And in the Bible, they say that Hagar in the desert, she always died, she was 30, she had a vision of an angel who say, go back to Sarai, and he say in the Bible, let her torture you, but do not worry, everything will be good, you have a big nation come from you. And she came back, and from her there is Ishmael. I think, I don't want to talk politics, I'm not a political person, but I think if you look about the Muslim and the Jew, the ancient, if you look at the core, I see it as a religious battle, it there. The divide, the problem of Ishmael and Isaac, they're from Sarai time, the ancient battle. And I read some very interesting article who said, after all, in the Bible they said how Abraham almost, killed his son. And I think because Abraham let Hagar to be tortured, run to the desert, and after that he make him run to the desert, Ishmael also, like Abraham, almost wanted to kill him. So there is a similarity in those two sons, Ishmael and Isaac, who had the same deep experience of a father who almost killed them. And I think it's something very interesting, and there is a similarity between those two ancient nations, ancient son. And this is how I see it. I think the Quran they tell the story differently. But I think Sarah was not easy woman. I don't think Hagar was so innocent. Again, there is, I look at it psychologically, so is the old woman and the young fertile woman. But I think this story changed the history. The way we tell it today, it's not that a legend that has been forgotten. It's something in the root of Islam and Judaism. And I think this is the core for many, many things that keep living until today. That's how I see it. So Hagar wasn't an easy person, Sarah wasn't an easy person, and Abraham, he is the weak here in the story. And I just finish and say that Sarah was the only woman in the whole Bible that God said to Abraham doesn't want to kick Ishmael to the desert, and God tell him, do whatever Sarah said. The first time that, like a feminist woman, not easy, but it was the first woman in the whole Bible that God said, do what she said to you. And this is something that I also cannot forget. For me, those stories, they're not some ancient legend. They keep living until today in the way you look at your life today, mentally, psychologically. It's in the core of everything. Sorry for this speech. It was like your question.
Sarah, I have to intervene here because my late closest friend, Aga Shahid Ali, his posthumous book was titled Call Me Ishmael Tonight.
Oh.
And I thought you might be interested in hearing just the last 3 couplets of that ghazal, because it goes right to the point you're trying to make. I love the internet. The hunt is over and I hear the call to prayer fade into that of the wounded gazelle tonight. My rivals for your love, you've invited them all. This is mere insult. This is no farewell tonight. And I, Shahid, only am escaped to tell thee, God sobs in my arms. Call me Ishmael tonight.
Wow.
So there's another example of a contemporary writer taking a very old tradition, in this case from the Quran, and translating it into his own idiom for his own particular circumstances.
And I see the emotion. It's very emotional text. It's not like you... And just say one thing, because I'm religious, I don't know if it's religious or not. Some say the Bible is like God gave it to you and it's sacred. And I see it as historical text. Of course, I do believe if a Bible fell from my hand on the floor, coming and kissing, and there is a sacred something more, but I see it as a story, it's an ancient story, and I can see the emotional, how we treat those ancient texts, not just something dry. Thank you.
Well, I'll just say that when his mother died, about 2.5 years before he died, he became a much closer reader of the Quran, partly, or perhaps even mostly, to find images and phrases that he could use in his own poems. But I think he was also trying to rewrite a certain tradition. As he often said to me, the first thing he was going to say to God in the afterlife was, "Why did you take my mother from me?"
Wow.
It's another way of finding an old story, a way to account for the current conditions.
They're relevant. They're always relevant.
Other questions?
Hello, everyone. I have personal question for you all as writers. What writing traditionals and rituals do you have, if you have some? And is it changing during this writing international writing residency program or not? You're keeping it the same or you don't have any at all? I wonder. I do believe you have some. Thank you.
Who wants to go?
Yeah, I have some kind of ritual which include writing in the morning and listening some music, but some kind of ambiental music, or and and that's all. And in some ways, it changed in this residence because of the activities or because of the weather. I don't know. But in general terms, I keep my ritual. I mean, my rhythm of writing here.
Okay. Well, personally, I need a very strict routine to write. I have to have many mundane things during my day so that I can really use writing as a way to remove myself from the world. So I have to wake up at 6 and get my daughter dressed and give her to the school bus. And then at 7:30, I make the second coffee and I sit down. There's something I do every day. I open a random book of poems, and I'm without seeing the pages, I try to point on a verse, and that verse is like the guidance of the day, or I make myself. I force myself to use it during the day while I write. I mean, in my writing, because I also love restrictions. I put a lot of restrictions on me when I'm writing. They're very creative. That's what I usually do. I sit down and write. I usually start by editing the things I wrote the day before. I usually remove the last paragraph of what I've written the day before. And then slowly I get in this zone. No calls, no Facebook, nothing. I'm just out of the world, and I love it. Yeah.
Can you tell us some of the restrictions you put on yourself to get your imagination going?
Yeah, when I get stuck, for example, I force myself to write in rhyme. I don't usually use it afterwards in the text, but that helps my brain find other paths that lead to a solution.
Brilliant.
Yep.
Others?
I eat a lot. No, it's not like someone I say, not that I eat like cucumbers, and I need, it's disgusting what I say. Just here, yeah. I need to eat a big eating here. Fortunately, it's good. I don't have the possibility to eat so much, but in my home I can eat, like, I don't know, a meat and a rice and some snacks, and again rice and something sweet, and I feel just after, the feeling like you become you're sweating from eating, and you're like stuck in the chair and hate yourself and feel this place of self-hatred. The best thing I've ever wrote was this, like sitting like a fat, sweating, self-hated person. And my first book, I think I was 10 kilo or more. I was so fat that my friend I haven't seen for 2 years, he was shocked. He said, "What happened to you? What happened?" And I said, no, everything in control. I wrote, and then now I try to make it more, the awareness, I try to, but it just, I don't know, eating. I think I just, to the end, I read something to comfort myself that it's not the eating, that during the chewing, like it says, does something to your brain, like an alpha or beta. Okay. So the chewing, and then I said, okay, so it's a brain thing. It's okay, it's not just the eating thing. But I read a lot and try to control it. Now in a deep writing, I eat a little less. But I think when I go home, I just start to, okay, wish me luck with that.
So normally I when I try to write, before that I read a lot of, so many books, just one page and one page and one page, so many books. So then when I realized that, there's nothing I want to read, because I read a lot of books and I can't concentrate on one thing. And then I realized that I have to concentrate myself. Then I write what I want to read. So this is all the same whenever I am there or here or something. So that's fine. Thank you.
Diana, do you want to add anything?
She started.
Oh, she's okay.
Yeah, I was first.
Can I ask? Actually, in South Korea, we have international literary festival too in Seoul, capital of South Korea, and connected of this festival. May I ask you, Mr. Mary, Christopher Mary? Is it okay? He doesn't listen. Yeah. So I told you in South Korea we have the international literary festival, and I have heard that you, Christopher Merrill, has joined that festival in South Korea. So I was wondering about your experiences there.
Well, maybe that would be better for me to tell you afterwards, because I want to keep the focus on our panelists here, okay? But I'm happy to talk about my time in South Korea. Yeah.
Hello, my question is for Diana. Your piece is a celebration of tradition, very clearly. So tradition is something that you hold very dear to you. Is there any tradition you would like, if you had the chance, that you would change in your country? What tradition would that be?
This tradition is beautiful. and I will keep this Dia de Muertos all my life. But also, there are another tradition in my country which I don't like for example the machismo, because it's a tradition and a ideology and a practice very rooted in the people. So of course I would like to change this practice, this way of life, because it's very dangerous for all of us. That's one. Thank you.
I have a question to you. You said, no, I just keep thinking about it. You said that you write before that you read before you write what you want to read, doesn't it paralyze you? I mean, for me, if I read something so great, I said, wow, I will never write something so good, so it paralyzed me. I cannot write. For you, it's like it helps you write? You said, I want to write like this or like this?
I'm sorry, I'm not very clear with your question. Can
you said, let me just jump to my head. You said that before you write, you read, and that helps you write. Doesn't it, if you read, I guess you read something good, right? That you want to write like it. Don't it stop you from writing? If you read something good, and I would think, oh my God, I will never write something so good, so it makes me stop writing. If I read it just before I start writing.
I see. Actually, it is not a good or bad things, It is something that can make you inspire, and then you can do it another thing.
Oh.
The American novelist Ron Hansen says he always begins by reading some poetry because it gets the verbal train moving.
Verbal train.
Others? Other questions? Since we have a bunch of writers here, anyone have any other ideas like that verbal train moving to get a piece of writing going? I like the rhyme. I like the eating.
Made me hungry. Now go to the market.
Anybody have any other tricks they use?
Maybe walking.
Yeah. I was going to say the same. Yeah.
Weather, yeah.
Walking. Either outside or inside the house, and sometimes I let myself speak out my thoughts, and especially when I write theater, I speak all the dialogues. And on screenplays as well. It helps the mind. I think when you speak, with yourself, when you're alone, your mind doesn't hear you. You don't have control of what you're saying. So you get in. The mind gets in. I'm going to use the word zone again, where the thoughts just run freely, and sorry, that's it. That was it. I was intending to say something more profound and helpful, but yeah.
I think that works. Okay. Thank you very much. Terrific panel. Please come back next Friday for Images of America, and this afternoon for the reading. Round of applause for our writers.